Hey folks, Rich Burtis, Datacom, Christchurch, New Zealand, with a walkthrough of a recent app we put together for the Digital Workplace Conference held in Auckland, New Zealand at the end of last month. I will show you the app that we created just to gather sentiment and session ratings and show you how we connect that to Microsoft Forms, and also walk you through how we did all the sentiment analysis steps as well. So let's go through the app first of all. So it's just a regular old mobile app, and if I refresh it, you'll see this little icon update. So this is using an SVG image to go off to the data source and gather the average sentiment of the 292 tweets that happened during the conference. So that image there is an SVG image. Now if you've never seen an SVG before, you should go check out David Nisimov's blog. It's an old blog for 2017, but he has an example of an SVG which I just took from the web using his Get the Template, and then just made it a bit more round and put it onto a timer to go and query the data source and then calculate how it should spin up. But I'll show you that towards the end of the session. But yeah, if you're looking for an SVG step through, this is great. So use David's info. Thanks, David, for putting that out there. Go back through the app. Okay, so the app itself just covers off the various what's happening. It's using SharePoint as the data source, so I can see who's speaking in the keynote, and then because I'm in the app, I can see what's happened so far. At the start of the conference, there were obviously no ratings and no sessions, and then information about what's happening, and I can go and rate the session if I want to. So that will just analyze my rating, so 1 to 5 rating ID, and then this text box where I put any comments in will go off to Azure Cognitive Services and assess the sentiment of my feedback. That's just using Microsoft Flow, but I'll show you how to do that as well. If we jump back, and then the sessions, basically just same setup. So tiles, I'll show you how to do this as well in a layout on a phone with a filter with different buttons for who's talking when and where. Just using SharePoint as a data source with images posted online of all the speakers' profiles. So go through, click into it, same deal. You can see everybody's responses. There is a bit of a load time as it goes off and grabs that average each time. I could have that as a local data collection, but I've just kept it as a data source for now. And then I can go back to the home and check out the overall speaker analysis. So if you had feedback during the conference, then you'll have scores showing up. So this is quite a good thing that all the speakers could look at, and it will load up as it updates itself as I scroll through. There'll be some more coming through. There we go. There they come. SharePoint as a data source can take a while, so again, possibly use that as a local collection on start to gather that information. Right, so that's the app. We also exposed for the conference delegates a Microsoft form that they could use to fill out, and if I preview that, so because they obviously couldn't get to the PowerApp because it wasn't externally shared, but you could come in and select a session, or a day, sorry, and then select a session, and then go through, do the same rating, and enter your feedback, and then that would use Flow again to go to this calculate sentiment analysis and then update the master SharePoint list of all the responses. There's a few steps when using Microsoft Forms to capture various elements IDs, so I'll step through how to do that as well. But this was for the delegates, and then for the folks that were in on the tenant, they could use the app to view the information. So let's go through the flows first of all. So let's go to the tweeting one. So if you've never used Cognitive Services from Azure, it's really simple to set up. There are lots of blog posts already about how to get an Azure account. All you need is an Azure account, get a free one, or get one from your company, and then sign up for the Cognitive Services. There are also free versions or trial versions of Cognitive Services to allow you to try and test it. Depending on what you're going to detect the sentiment on, that may adjust what plan you pick, but the free pick will give you 20 sentiment analysis runs per minute or so, and it's like 1,000 a month. So if you were to go off and analyze Twitter to something like Game of Thrones or something, then you would use up all of your allocation on your free account very, very quickly. But if you're using it for a conference, then you should be all good, depending on how many delegates are coming into the conference and how often they're going to be tweeting about the conference. But to connect your flow to sentiment analysis is as simple as the trigger, basically when a tweet is posted, and then grab your hashtag as you want, and then you basically just select, or you go to add an action, and then it's, if you typed in cognitive, you'll get all the cognitive services that would expose from Microsoft, and then the one we want is actually language. So let's just change that back to language, and then we go text analytics. That's what I want. Okay, the first time you set this up, you'll be asked for your API endpoint and your key, which is what you get when you first create your connection to cognitive services in Azure. So it doesn't cover that piece here. And then all you're doing is basically tapping in the detect sentiment action. So I get rid of this one. I've already done it here. And all I want using the dynamic text is the tweet text. And I'm going to pick English, or EN for English here. Could go multi-language, and I could have another step beforehand to detect the language and then adjust that so I could get a decent sentiment analysis on it. But all the speakers and all the conference delegates were generally tweeting in English at the conference, so we're able to use that as the catch-all. Okay, so what happens then? Go off to Azure, it'll get a score. It'll get a number between 0 and 1 in terms of the sentiment. And sentiment is basically just the ratio of positive and negative words, to put it really, really simply. I'm sure someone will complain that that's not quite the right answer, but the words that you type into your customer response will be analysed for the good stuff and the bad stuff, and then a ratio between the two, or a scaling of what they are. Doesn't always pick up things like sarcasm or jokes or the way you might express your language. It basically just takes the words that are there. And so you may get high scores or you may not. So it's useful to check, if you're going to base anything on sentiment analysis, to check what's being said so you can compare that, that it is actually bad sentiment or good sentiment. So just remember that. And then all we do is go to SharePoint. We've got a dev tenant here with a list, and then all I'm posting in here is my tweet text and my score. And that's for Twitter. To go for a Microsoft form. Actually, I'll do the PowerApps one first. So PowerApps is exactly the same. PowerApps is the trigger. Detect sentiment exactly the same. I just want to basically call the action from the PowerApp off a button, and then same items with creating item. And I'm going to a different list here. So this is a detecting sentiment from the session and the speaker. So I have things in here. My session ID is a number. So just remember that for SharePoint data source, because that's going to impact on what we do for the Microsoft form, because they don't necessarily gather numbers as they come in. They gather text, not IDs. So just be aware of that, and also for sentiment score. All right, so that's the one for PowerApps. For Microsoft form, so we've got this form. When you click submit, it will go off. The first step of when you're using Flow to connect to a Microsoft form is to do when a response is submitted, and then you won't see the apply to each as the first step, but as soon as you say, you have to go when a response is submitted, and then the action is get response details, and that will automatically wrap it into an apply to each, just in case there's more responses per that particular response. Kind of feels weird when you first do it, but don't stress too much. Basically, you're going to get response details, and that's the form ID, and then the response ID is this guy up the top. So once you've got that, you can then tap that into any other actions you want. So we do exactly the same step. We go off and send detect sentiment from to give feedback on the session, and then we don't need to do anything other than have English as our language, exactly the same as all the other steps. And then now to show you in Microsoft Forms, so how do I capture the ID of the session? Because I can't use a lookup list and have that like I can in SharePoint, or I can have that in PowerApps and grab that information and have that as a hidden field. I need to expose the ID of the session in my Microsoft form, and hopefully people will just ignore that that's a number in front of it, and they'll just figure out that that's the section the session they're going to respond in on. So what I'm doing, first of all, I need to check the day, because I wanted to have two options, Tuesday and Wednesday, when they could select, because there was 30 odd sessions. That would be quite a long Microsoft form to scroll through to give feedback on one particular session. So first condition I have is to, now that doesn't really say much, but if I click it, it's basically selecting the day. So was it a session for Wednesday or was it a session for Tuesday? Now this one is a session for Tuesday, and then basically is it the string Tuesday the 30th. So that's the value that would come from the Microsoft form. And what I've done is use an expression, string, to capture Tuesday the 30th. So that matches my Tuesday the 30th there, right? So if the answer to that question is Tuesday the 30th, then something in Microsoft Flow is going to happen, right? And if it is, yes. So what I'm doing is I haven't really named these sections very well, but basically I'm going to create an item twice in two different lists. So first of all, create the item. So basically, if it's Tuesday, let's go over here, and then I'm going to pop it into. I was just messing around grabbing two information. I've got surveys and I've got feedback. So both got slightly different data sources as their fields, right? So it's important to know when you're using Microsoft Forms. The sentiment score for each of these is a number, whereas in this item I had a text value for my rating. So then I can just grab the ID or the rating score that came from my Microsoft form, which is down here. That will come through it, even though it's like 1 to 5, it's going to just give me that 1 to 5 as text. So that works fine when my data source is a text field. However, when my data source, as in my SharePoint list, and my session ID are both number fields, I have to do something with how I'm going to get the information from Microsoft Flow and from the form to turn it into a number. It's actually pretty straightforward. You just put the word int around your item, and you have to kind of work out what your ID of your item is. But let me show you this guy. So I'm basically going to take, for this session ID, and if I show you that one, that is the first 2 digits of any of these responses, right? So for the Tuesday or for the Wednesday. Okay, and so what I'm doing for session ID is I'm going to create a number, and I'm also going to take the substring being I can take some of the text that is in the answer, and then the body is the answer that's coming through. So get response details, and that's the name of the field, so you kind of have to know what that is. But then if I go to the end of that, I'm going to start my substring at 0 and then finish it at 2. So that's the very start of the answer, and then go 2 characters in, which will always just capture the first 2 items that are going to exist in the Microsoft form. So 1 here and then blank, or 1 and 0, 1, 1, or 6, 7 and blank, and that's going to turn that into a number. And then that will go into SharePoint as a number, which is great, which means I can track the session. And then same for rating. Exactly the same thing. That was a bit easier to figure out because I'm taking that rating from the rating in the list above, just to make it a bit easier to see, rather than the whole GUID or the ID number you'll get with a Microsoft form column. So basically, int, turn it into a number, grab the item, and that's going to basically be a 1 to 5 number as it comes in. And that's as simple as it is to create a flow from Microsoft Form to push into SharePoint and gather some other information or convert some data as it comes in. Alright, let's step through the PowerApp next. I'll go up to the start. And so I'm using SharePoint as my data source, and I've only got 500 items configured, I think, for my delegable limits. So it's obviously flagging up that, hey, you could be getting close to 500, or we're just going to get the first 500 items we find, which is fine at the moment. Same for the Twitter response. That's another SharePoint list. Again, there's 292, so I'm all good for that. So what I've got here, standard template, image, another image as a background. This is a group I've put together to grab everything. If I show you, I've hidden a few things. Basically, I've got a timer with a duration of 0.75 seconds, and I've got a slider, which is the same as what you have in David's slider here, but I'm running the values of the slider automatically. So on load, so as soon as it gets the average, it's going to run. The slider is going to start from 0 and go up to the average sentiment score that we see here. Okay, so there we can see the formula for that. So my variable for the slider end score, which is 45.5, the duration of that is going to be the score.value divided by the score.duration. So spread that out over this 0.75 of a second, and then it will slowly expand that out across. So I'll make this code available so people can use this if they want to. Available. I'll put that up after this in the comments, so people can grab it so you can test it out. But yeah, just a regular old timer control, starting from 0, moving it around to whatever the timer score value will be at the end. Alright, so that's that one, and all these are just buttons in a group. I'll take you through to the various speakers, and I do the same thing. So if I go to the speakers thing, and we're using our naming sessions, naming conventions, so screen underscore, and then I get the same little blips for each of these. Sorry about that. Okay, so SharePoint is data source, so we're getting lots of delegation warnings, but don't stress, each of these is in each particular cell of my table here, or my gallery, sorry. And so each of these, they're only going to get like 38, 15 type of session responses, so not 500 items, or total 500 items, which is good. So we're covered from all of that. And then I can basically see who the speaker was. If you ever want to do a round picture, super simple, make the image the same size, and then adjust its border radius to 100. Depending on your dimensions of your image, you may need to make that bigger or smaller to get that circular, but that's how you do that. Super simple. That's just a star with a background on it, and then I've got the number of sessions that come in from the SharePoint data source of the ratings is just an average. So I'm rounding the average to just one. So if you're using PowerApps round, you just have to specify how many items you want to round to, decimal points, sorry. And I'm going and getting the average. That's my data source, filtering my data source against the session ID. I'm getting the average score, and then I'm rounding it to 1 decimal point. That's that one. And then we do the same with, sorry Brian, there's no answers for you, but for someone Cameron, you can see 85.8. And then my slider value is what I show in the 0, and that's what powers my little automated SVG sort of animation. Alright. And then if I jump back to the sessions, so each session is just a it's another gallery. To make a 2-column gallery, you're going to want to adjust your wrap count. From 1 will be the default, turn to 2, make it a bit taller. So edit the single image, adjust that, change the background color, and then you want to jump into the border behind your thing. You want the template fill. Is white, so that's what's the little template inside the cell or the tile of my item, and then I've got a background of my gallery, which is my, sorry, I grab it from over that side. My background fill from the actual screen or this item is there, just grey, just to make it stand out, and I drop in another filler at the bottom. Just to make it purple, make it stand out as a card. Now, so these are date fields from SharePoint to show you how to make those. If you ever want to adjust date to show just particular elements of date rather than the whole long or short date, you can just grab, this is this item, session time, that's a date time field. And what I'm doing there is, if you're in New Zealand, you make that NZ, that's not going to work. You're going to want to have EN US or EN UK or something, and then 3 Ds for the first 3 digits of your date or your day, and then 2 Ds for the actual calendar number, for want of a better term, and then exactly the same for time of my session. So as again, same field, date time field from SharePoint, EN US, and then hh.mm to give us the 2 digits for the hour, and then the 2 digits for the minutes in 24-hour clock time. Alright, cool, let's move through. And so Once I go into my session information, I can review a session, and I can rate it. So basically my information, and that's just a click through to another screen which gives us a form where I've got 2 fields to complete, the star rating and then the text analysis and a submit button to show on the screen just to submit PowerApps to Flow. All I need to do is send my PowerApp, which is my DWC 2019 Sentiment PowerApp, run it, and then those are the fields I'm going to gather, and then just navigate through and pop a little rating's been submitted notification on my PowerApp to show that that's gone through. So to show what that looks like. If I could spell awesome right, it would be even better. It would in fact be awesome. And there's my little notification box. Can't really change the font size when that happens, so but it's enough. Depending on your browser and your browser settings of size, then that may be bigger or smaller, but the height will always be about the same. So that will go through, that will run the flow, and then update the data source, and then the next time you go back to that session, you get a different count of how many sessions, and then the item will change. As long as I had a refresh in there to make that go to 19, but that's okay. So in a nutshell, that's our little PowerApp that we put together to help the Digital Workplace Conference. It was a cool looking app. The Microsoft form was used really well. In the session we had 450 odd responses, which was awesome, and that helped fuel a bit of competition between all the speakers to see who get ranked the best. And so I think everyone did a great job at the conference to talk. So everyone did great. So thanks for letting us come. Thanks for letting us build the app. I will put the source code or the app of this available for all people to download if you want it. So this guy, obviously the data sources that connect to this and the flows that connect to it won't be there, but you can take the elements of this and connect it up to your own SharePoint lists or your own flows to do actions with, should you so wish. Hope that's helped. Any questions though, just reach out in the comments, ping me on LinkedIn or YouTube. Happy to answer your questions. Have a great day. Cheers.